Welcome to the Gunning Truth, the season review with Roni. So I'm sitting at my holiday destination and trying to sum up the season as a whole. It's very difficult because myself as an individual, I'm a winner. I played sports as a youngster and I've always been a winner. I've actually gotten a number of red cards in the various sports that I've played because of that fact. And I'm not trying to portray myself as individualistic or as someone that only cares about the win. But it's very prevalent that it's been a very, very good season for Arsenal. And unfortunately, it just so happens that we didn't get any trophies. Manchester City, Manchester United's big rivals, and Manchester United laughing at Arsenal this season, despite finishing below us for the second consecutive season. I think it might have been 15 points last season, 9 points this season. And it's very funny for me this last couple of months, especially the second half of the season, which I thought Arsenal weren't anywhere close to their form in the first half of the season. So it is a situation where you look at two halves. And normally when they say is a game has two halves, well, Arsenal have had performances which has had two halves. And I've watched quite a few content creators create, little stories as to where things went wrong for Arsenal. And there was this one content creator, can't remember who it was, but there was a mention of how Newcastle United were able to stifle our wide players. And yes, I think Saliba is probably the biggest moment because in that same game, in a game or in a competition where Arsenal didn't take it very seriously until the game where they messed up, which was against Sporting in the second leg. Or let me say they messed up in the first leg and the team changes in the second leg. Obviously, we played a much stronger team, and it's basically from there onwards where it was downhill. You can look at a second part after the international break. I'm not entirely certain. I'm assuming the Sporting Lisbon game was before the international break. And then obviously after the international break, it was downhill for Arsenal. I think Liverpool was directly after the international break, or it might have been Leeds United. I think it was Leeds United after the international break. There was a little bit of issues off the ball for Arsenal in that game. And then obviously, despite fantastic first 30 minutes against Liverpool and West Ham, that's basically where it technically cost us in terms of the back end of the season. However, something did make sense, and that was how Newcastle United in January, I think it was the 0-0 draw. It might have been Monday the 4th of January, I actually remember it clearly, just a couple of days after our excellent win against Brighton. And that is where things started to change because teams started to figure out a way to double up on Martinelli and double up on Bukayo Saka. And that obviously stemmed our momentum. Yes, there were other games where we were still able to control games. I'm obviously thinking of the Fulham game where we controlled most of that game. Funny enough, we actually still do concede chances, and obviously every football team does. It's very difficult to dominate for 90 minutes. I think the Brentford game was probably as perfect as it got, but the Fulham game was quite close as well. And that was in the back end of our run. And then obviously Newcastle United also had chances, so probably you can say less control there, but control for most of the game, and where Arsenal looked like that dominating force. So it's very difficult to pinpoint it. You can look at it at a couple of ways. I'm going to go with three ways as to why our season kind of imploded. I'm going to go with, in third place, the way that Newcastle showed how to stifle our right and left wingers, so that's Martinelli and Saka. They were vital. Obviously, we've got other parts of our team. You needed to have Saliba at right centre back and Tommy Yasso to be able to relieve Ben White, because Ben White could have come in for Saliba. So I'm going to put it down as the second key thing that stifled our title run, possible title winning run. Minus the fact that Manchester City are who they are. They're what I call a computer team. They've got robots. I've been mentioning that before. So obviously in second place, the second reasoning is the Saliba situation, and then obviously the final reason being we are a young squad, and it just seemed like in that final, when in the final bit of the season where Man City started to get on a roll, we weren't able to respond to that, and that is what was important. The Liverpool game, the let's call it the second half, or let's say from minute 40 onwards, probably earlier 30 minutes with the West Ham situation because we had them. We also could have scored a penalty at the end, and then obviously so the Southampton game. So all three those games, rather than going to the Etihad and getting beaten quite easily, those games because you would have had a different type of confidence going into the Manchester City game. And then there's just something I want to mention. The time, obviously, the Queen's death was extremely sad, and it's a big deal in England. But around that time, I'm not saying that the Queen shouldn't have died. I'm just saying that in and around that time, Manchester City's form was a bit scratchy. I think they had a loss and a draw going into that Thursday where we were supposed to play them. I think it was a Thursday. Obviously, we had to play our PSV home game. We had to play that in the week where we would have played Manchester City. Now, we were on a run of about 5 consecutive wins, and then that game got changed to January, I think it might have been, possibly February. I think it was Feb. So the Arsenal Man City home game, when Arsenal were in great form and Manchester City were not in the best of form. I think that's also quite something, if you think about it, it's something that's quite big. But at the end of the day, we weren't experienced enough in dealing with all those factors that I just mentioned now, especially in those 3 key games after the international break, the Liverpool, West Ham and Southampton at home Trident. Those 3 games are probably going to end up being key because of the lead that we had. So you were in a situation where the home and away against Manchester City doesn't really come into play. I know Arsenal lost the league by 5 points, but obviously in the last couple of games Manchester City were able to rotate a little bit, and that's why they drew and lost. They drew with Brighton and they lost to Brentford. Another thing that another content creator said, that if Arsenal at the very least could just have pushed Manchester City to the final 2 games, we might have had a different chance of winning the league, in the sense that regardless of how strong Manchester City are and the amount of games that they played at the back end, it's possible that Brighton and Brentford could have gotten the same results, i.e. Brighton the draw and Brentford the win, or the other way around, because it was 2 very difficult away games. Funny enough, Arsenal won both away, and they drew and lost at home to those teams in question. So, a season in 2 halves. The reason why I put it that way is up until the World Cup, we controlled games. We controlled teams in that respect. We were able to play Man United off the park, mostly in the Old Trafford game. Unfortunately, there were a couple of results that went against us, and we were very poor in terms of, in certain moments, they were able to play through us quite easily. It was also a game where Thomas Partey didn't play, Bukayo Saka had a brilliant game, Jesus had a good game, Martinelli had a good game, Odegaard had a good game. We dominated the ball for quite large periods, and Old Trafford was quiet, but we somehow allowed Anthony to score early and allow Ericsson to have quite easy through balls in that game. I think 2 through balls, because Sambi Lokonga didn't cover his positions well. I know Gabriel for the first goal and Saliba for the second or third goal were at fault, but Arsenal were pushing up for the equaliser at that time. So that's something to look at early on in the season, but then Arsenal responded by beating Tottenham and Liverpool at home not too long after that. I think it was Brentford directly after that in a fantastic 3-0 win where Odegaard was injured and Vieira played one of his better games of the season. So it's quite a lot of things to look back at, and it was a season to enjoy, because at the end of the day, if you look at all the punditry, not me, I predicted Arsenal to finish second. I did say in my earlier podcast, right after the the pre-season friendlies, I said Arsenal will fight Liverpool for second. I don't care if I was wrong about Liverpool. I care about the fact that no one else predicted Arsenal will even make the top 4, and I predicted Arsenal to finish second. So That was the expectation. So I don't know what I think about next season because there's still a lot of transfer stories to happen, and we'll have to wait and see as to what happens with that. So I'm very interested to see what's going to happen in this off season. But on my tablet, I've got some slides. I'm not going to go the StreamYard route today because the internet here is a bit dodgy. So what I've got on my first slide is last season. So obviously, Liverpool once again pushed Manchester City all the way. Manchester City 93 points after 38 games, whereas this season they got 89. Obviously, they probably would have gotten the same amount of points if they didn't rotate so much in their last 3 games. Manchester City 93 compared to 89 this season. They had a goal difference of 73. They scored 5 goals less this season, despite having Haaland, and they conceded 7 goals more. So they actually had a better season statistically last season. Liverpool had 92 points last season. They only had 67 this season in 5th place. So they dropped off considerably by 25 points. Chelsea, I don't know how many points they ended up with, but they had 74 in 3rd place last season. I don't know what Tottenham have this season because I've only got the top 5 on. They are also nowhere. Arsenal had 69 points last season. 13 defeats this season, only 6 defeats. Very poor last 3 defeats. Well, Man City can beat you on any day. And then obviously the last 2 defeats were Nottingham away and Brighton at home. So that just made it a little bit worse. But 6 defeats only this season. We had 3 draws only last season. We had 6 this season. But we have 26 wins compared to 22 wins of last season. So 4 wins more. We obviously scored way more goals. We only scored 61 goals last season. This season we scored 88. We conceded 48 goals. Disappointingly conceded 43 goals this season. Was hoping we could concede around about 38, 37 there around. So still obviously those type of things to work on. Got a lot of goals conceded in the last run, the last 8 games or so. So most of those goals came then. So 84 points for Arsenal, whereas last season they had 69. So that's, 16? Plus still we messed up quite a lot of games in the back end. So that's 15, yeah. 15 points more than last season. So, yeah, not too bad. Goal difference last season was 13, whereas this season it's 45. So there's a lot of improvements that Arsenal made. They challenged. Manchester City did not challenge. It would have been a boring league. The league would have been over much sooner. In fact, I said it would be Man City to win considerably by an easier margin. I thought the league would be done by March in my predictions. However, I said Arsenal would finish second and we were able to push them. So I don't obviously feel that great by saying, okay, we did push them, but faltered at the end. But I feel let's give Arteta and these guys a bit of credit. Yes, they fell off at the end and we feel crap about it, but we have to look at who we were up against. And obviously the squad itself, the squad maybe just wasn't good enough because not good enough in the sense that yes, Arteta had 14, 15, 16 players that he depended on. However, you can't be in a situation where it's 1 or 2 guys goes out and there's a humongous change in system and the change in the way the team adapts. Can't have that situation. So we had Saliba out, brought in Holding. And then after a while, we actually changed it again, where we had Kivio at right centre back, the left footer, and obviously you had a situation now where Thomas Partey at the end played at right back. You had Ben White at right centre back, but it seemed like it was a back 3 because Kivio tucked in with Gabriel. And then you had Ben White either overlapping Thomas Partey or you had Thomas Partey playing on the right. It was very confusing, probably for the players. Some people thought it was much better against Wolves. It's very difficult to look too much into the Wolves game because they were awful. They were on the beach. And it would be nice if that was the case, if Arsenal still had to chase the title and Wolves were on the beach on the final day of the season. It just didn't happen. Right, I've got a slide on here now where it's the Arsenal best 11 with a little bit of stats. So in goal, Ramsdale. 14 clean sheets this season, so that must be a record for an Arsenal goalkeeper in quite some time. Ben White was our right back for most of the season, in fact just about every game. 2 goals, 5 assists, so that's not bad stats. I don't know where he got all 5 assists. I must just double check that one. But anyway, uh, and then William Saliba, fantastic right centre back. What a player! He's got presence, and hopefully he signs on for Arsenal. He had 2 goals, 1 assist, and then 3 goals for Gabriel Magalhaes at left centre back, and then at left back 1 goal, 2 assists. Alexander Zinchenko. I'm pretty certain this is the entire season stats. Thomas Odegaard. Sorry, let's go Thomas Partey. Uh, why did I call him Thomas Odegaard? It's Martin Odegaard. Anyway, Thomas Partey, he is what we call our 6. 3 goals this season, no assists. Our left 8, what a season. Granit Xhaka, 7 goals, 7 assists. So he's got 9 goals this season. So this is definitely Premier League stats only. And then obviously Martin Odegaard, my personal preference for player of the season. I obviously had to change my Premier League player of the season from him to, because a couple of months ago I thought that maybe he was the best player in the Premier League. Obviously we know Haaland finishes off things, so he was basically given the young player and the player of the season. I fully accept that. 15 goals, 7 assists, so that's 22 goal contributions from Martin Odegaard. And then our right winger, 14 goals, 11 assists from once again I'm coming with Thomas, Bukayo Saka. So 25 goal contributions, 20 goal contributions from Martinelli, that's 15 goals. Well, you're going to look at it as Odegaard is the top goal scorer because he assisted 7 times. 15 goals, 5 assists from Martinelli, and then Gabriel Jesus, 11 goals, 6 assists. I don't know when last Arsenal had so many players in double digits when it comes to goals. And then obviously Trossard had like 11 or 12 assists. I think could have been 10 alone at Arsenal. So he came in and he was fantastic. So Arsenal need to get to that point where we have 20 players that's really contributing. And that means the likes of Vieira, Smith Rowe and Nelson needs to play more games and they need to contribute. And contribute means almost getting up to 10 goal contributions. That is our aim for next season. And then to concede less goals, we need to defend better. It can't just be where we've got inverted players that's not defending. And I'm referring to our right back and our left back. So that's something that needs to be worked on in pre-season, being able to defend better, because it seems like we've got enough goals in the team. And then Arsenal's Premier League results by season. So obviously the invincible season, we got 90 points, 26 won, 12 games drawn, 47 goal difference. I see in 045 when we got 83 points, we actually scored 87 goals, conceded 36. And that was our best goal difference of 51. So that was quite a good season. However, that was our 4th best points tally. So it seems like Arsenal, this young Arsenal team, were able to get Arsenal's 3rd best ever Premier League tally on 84 points. 01-02, lost 3 times, drew 9 times, won 26. 87 points, and obviously the same amount of wins as the Invincibles, 26 wins, scored more goals. However, that team barely conceded goals, 26 goals conceded. So Arsenal's best defensive season was in 98-99, double season, that was the season of Man United, isn't it? Can't remember now. 97-98 we won the league. 98-99, I think that was Man United's double. We conceded only 17 goals that season. Wow. Only scored 59 though. 122, 78 points. So that was quite a good season defensively. And then Arsenal's Premier League results by season in terms of goals scored. 88, is that right? Yeah. So this season, that was Arsenal's best ever goals scored over a season of 38 games in the Premier League, 88 goals. So that's actually quite awesome. The 04-05 team scored 87 goals. Yeah, I remember they scored a lot, but they conceded a lot as well in that season. Invincibles, 03-04, only scored 73 goals. That's very interesting. So, interesting results. So it looks like this team has actually done really, really well. So, just my final thoughts. Obviously, I've discussed what I thought about the season as a whole, two halves. But now I want to look ahead to next season and Manchester City, Manchester United. I don't know about Tottenham, but Chelsea and Liverpool are going to invest heavily. We're talking about record amounts of expenditure, and that needs to go for Arsenal as well. Yeah, Arsenal needs to go 250 million plus. However, that means that they need to sell well. So I'm going to review again what Arsenal needs to do, but I'm just gonna like off the cuff think about our sales first before I even delve into what I think we should bring in. So, okay, in goal, we need to try and see if we can. Well, I was now thinking of Okonko. So Okonko is somebody that's done really well, I think, in the Austrian league, and he deserves to be a third keeper. But there's another one. I don't know how Hilson is doing. I'm just thinking now of our third keeper because we need to have a decent third keeper, but maybe Carl Hein is the one. It's very difficult when it comes to keepers because our second keeper barely plays and he's a US international. So hopefully, I think we might end up selling a Conco. So if we don't sell a Conco, then he needs to be the third keeper and Hein needs to go on loan. Second keeper, Matt Turner, needs to stay. He's an American international and the next World Cup is in America. So we're going to get very close to where he needs to be kind of guaranteed more games. Is he going to play in the Champions League? Ramsdale hasn't played in the Champions League ever, so is Ramsdale going to play Champions League and League? Will Arteta play Turner in the league? If he doesn't play him in the Champions League, what's going to happen there? Are we going to go long enough into the League Cup and FA Cup to be able to have Turner play more games? Is our third keeper going to play League Cup only? And in that case, who is the third keeper? Is he good enough to be able to let us get through to the next stages? Because we need to be better in the cups. That's one of the main things. Need to be better in the cups, and we need to rotate smartly this time. And then, obviously, Ramsdale will be our number one. So what's our fullback situation? So currently we've got Zinchenko and Tierney at left back. You've got Tomiyasu that can play left back and right back. And you've got Ben, 10 out of 10 White, that can play right centre back and right back. So I feel the right back situation, I think we need to try to possibly get a inverted fullback. So hopefully someone that can play both sides. A João Cancelo. There aren't many of him out there. And I find it very difficult to believe the stories that we probably are very keen on him because he's the profile of player that we need. I find it very hard to believe that Man City will sell to us. I don't know. I'm skeptical on that one, but that's the type of player that we need. Maybe there's someone out there. Internally, we've got Brook Norton Cuffy. Did he make it? Yeah, they made it through to the Premier League. The team that he plays for, was it Coventry? I think it is. Did he play for Coventry? No, but Luton, sorry. So they got beaten by Luton. So he did not make it with his Loney club into the Premier League, but he had a very good season. So there's someone that we can look at in pre-season. Tomiyasu is going to be injured. There's 2 rumours that he will miss the entire pre-season and only be back in September when Arsenal are already starting to play Champions League games. And that means he needs to have his pre-season then. The other rumour is he's not going to be available till December. So I don't know which one is true, but either way, he's injury prone. He has missed both. I don't know if he's been here 2 or 3 years, but he's missed both end-of-season run-ins, top 4 run-in and league title run-in. So that's a concern. Arsenal are not going to sell him. So that probably means Arsenal's going to probably get someone in. Don't forget, we still have Cedric Suarez at Fulham. There's been reports that he wants to fight for his place. So he'll be here in pre-season. So, my opinion, Brook Norton Cuffy needs to, if possible, it's going to be difficult to get him into a Premier League team. A Luton, for example. And then on loan. Cedric Suarez needs to be sold. And then, obviously, we're going to have Ben White and Tomiyasu. Tomiyasu can cover right, left centre backs, right back and left back. So he stays. And then obviously I think Tierney is going to go to Newcastle very likely. I can't see him going to Aston Villa because Newcastle is closer to the Scottish border if I'm not mistaken. So he's probably homesick and he probably wants to play Champions League with another club where he will start. So I think he will go. And then obviously Zinchenko is there as our main player. And we are linked with Fresh Nader. It's a real Valladolid youngster. I don't know if he can play right back and left back, and I don't know if he can play inverted. I've never seen him play. But that's also something that needs to be looked at. So the fullback situation, clearly there's something that needs to happen. I can't see us doing a right back and left back. So somebody that can play both positions is probably going to have to come in before the end of the window. At centre back, we are linked with Gay, the Crystal Palace captain. Very good player, right centre back I think, and can play left centre back. So that's someone that we need to go for, and Holding needs to go. Kivio needs to continue his good form. Obviously, there was ups and downs at the back end of the season with him. Especially was the Brighton first goal, for example. But there was more good than bad in the games that he's played. And then obviously William Saliba, we need to sort out his contract as well. And then Gabriel, obviously a mainstay and part of the leadership group. So that is our defensive line. Then in midfield, so we play obviously with a 6, we play with a left 8, and we play with a right 8/10 creative player that plays on the right 8. Xhaka looks like he's going to Germany, and it looks like we are looking at Caicedo and Rice. So the good thing about Rice and Caicedo is Rice can play the 6, the 8. He can play centre-back, even though we're not going to play him there. But that's just the type of player that we're getting, someone that can play various roles. So Rice and Caicedo, that's obviously 100 million and 80 million, so 180 million alone just on those two players. I don't think we'll get both. I've got the funny feeling that we're going to get Rice, but then Caicedo ends up going to Chelsea. Anyway, but I'm hoping we get both because Caicedo can play right back as well. So there's another thing that's kind of sorted out when it comes to us. However, if we do get Caicedo, then he plays right back. Then we've got Tomiyasu that's injury prone, Zinchenko that's injury prone, and Tierney that's leaving. So that tells you we need to get a left back. And I don't know if Fresneda can play left back as well, or does he play the inverted role both sides? We're not getting Cancelo. So there we go. I just started talking about the holding midfielders. Then I already inverted back or reverted back to our fullback situation. So that's key because of Arsenal's inverted roles. That goes hand in hand with Arsenal's number 6. That is why we struggled, because our right centre-back wasn't there, our inverted fullbacks weren't playing well, and that affected our CDM, which is Thomas Partey, who's also linked to other clubs. Thomas Partey stays, Xhaka goes, he's got my blessing, provided Arsenal bring in 2. El Neni will stay on. He will probably, I think he started trading at the back end of the season, so it's a good chance that he will be in pre-season. I'm not entirely sure what his role is going to be because there's Jorginho as well, and the possibility of Arsenal bringing in 2 DMs, or a 6 and a 8. I don't think Arsenal's going to get Gundogan, the fantastic German midfielder that's been so brilliant for Manchester City. I think he's got a pre-agreement with Barcelona. However, he would have been perfect for Arsenal. And then we kind of in a situation where Thomas Partey can go, and we get Caicedo, Rice, and Gundogan. But then I think about it, you can't lose 2, bring in 3 completely different midfielders and expect to challenge again, even though it's fantastic players. But then you're changing your whole dynamic of your team. So only Xhaka goes for me from the midfielders. El Neni will stay. It's not my preference, but it's Arteta's preference. He brings a certain vibe to the team. Jorginho will stay another season, 1 more season. And Thomas Partey will stay. So I don't know if we are going to get 3 midfielders because I just mentioned quite a few there. I think we'll get 2 midfielders in. Caicedo and Rice will be perfect to complement Jorginho, El Neni, and Thomas Partey. Then, in pre-season, Emile Smith-Rowe needs to learn the left 8 role because that's where he's going to play. Another content creator on another podcast that I listened to, and it was very interesting, saying that Arsenal need to adopt 2 styles in their forward line. You can't have Martinelli, Jesus, Saka, and they are brilliant, playing all the time. So how about having a Manchester City system? Manchester City had Bernardo Silva on the right, Grealish on the left, and they had obviously Haaland. So how about getting a different profile centre forward, and then you play the different profile left and right wide players. On the right, Vieira, similar to Bernardo Silva. On the left, Smith-Rowe, similar to Grealish. And then you have a different style of play. We're not taking anyone away. We're just changing for certain games and then playing Smith-Rowe on the left, on the right playing Vieira, Obviously, Odegaard, possibly. I'm not entirely sure. Let's say Caicedo and Rice in the midfield three. Smith Rowe left, right winger Vieira, and a different striker. So not Balogun, not Nketiah, not Jesus. They're all the same. A different type of a striker. So that's something that I will actually get into when I start analysing the real targets that Arsenal are after. And obviously, I'm not saying take anybody away. I'm just saying use what you currently have, buy the midfielders that we are linked with, and then a different striker. And then obviously Arsenal are linked with a right forward, or Arsenal, well, it's a combination of Arsenal being linked with a right forward and me wanting us to have a little bit of a difference there. So I've got a different opinion in that sense that Nelson and Saka can cover right wing, Martinelli slash Emile Smith Rowe slash Trossard to cover left wing. You've got Jesus and Trossard to play through the middle if you want a different style of play. However, getting a relatively pricey, up to about 60 million, centre forward. Somebody that gives you something different. I don't know if there's somebody out there that's really good that can. I don't know if how we're going to go about it, because I can't say he's going to score 20 goals. He's going to have to score 20 in 20 games because Jesus will play quite often. Just remember, Jesus can play right wing and left wing as well. So a lot of gaps still in Arsenal's Arsenal that we need to look at going forward. So I'm going to leave that here because I don't want to get into transfer rumours yet. We're linked with this every Tom, Dick and Harry. And I think it is time for Arsenal just to refresh. Because just based on what I've said now, I've like said this off the cuff, and I'm sure it's Arsenal's recruitment team think about this even deeper. But it just seems like there's quite a few things that we can still do. The situation that we need to change is we have to look at our inverted fullback roles, because we still giving off too many chances. So the inverted fullback role has a direct relation to our holding midfielder. That's key. We've got Xhaka that's going. He has given us, I think, 18 goal contributions. It might be 17, 9 goals, 8 assists in all competitions. So that goes away. So if it's not a Gundogan that comes in, a Caicedo and a Rice has never scored those amount of goals before in their lives. We are linked with a Xavi Simons, the Dutch wide player. So he's a wide forward. He doesn't really play in any of Arsenal's 3 midfield positions. He plays advanced in a 4-3-3, whereas Arsenal don't really play 4-3-3. They've got a very tricky system, and with wing backs and all that. So he doesn't play in that role. I know he quite heavily linked with him. I don't know why, because of his his agent is David Dean's son. So Darren Dean is the agent of Xavi Simons. So I think that's where the links come in. But in terms of how Arsenal want to play, yes, Arteta could be changing the way that we play for next season. So that's also another way where you've got the CDM playing at right back, similar to what Manchester City are doing, and Brighton also to some extent. So it's going to be very interesting to see. I don't know what the plans are. I don't know what the recruitment style is going to be, because maybe there's going to be a change for next season. Maybe we are going to go for a centre forward and not another right winger, because we are now going to invest in Nelson. However, Arteta likes to play with a left footer on the right and a right footer on the left. So I'm not entirely sure why we would then keep Nelson. I know it's a English homegrown player, and obviously you would pay more for somebody that you need in that position than to give him an increase in his wages, and obviously we would have lost him for free. So that part I understand. But if Arteta wants to play left foot on the right wing, I don't know what's going to happen now with Nelson. Is Nelson going to be part of Jesus, Smith Rowe, Trossard and Martinelli that all plays on the left? Doesn't make sense. But I will actually go into the squad building again. But my thoughts is 2 things. Number 1, Arsenal will continue to play a similar way, just maybe better, and buy players according to that, or Arsenal will buy a couple of players that just changes it up a little bit, and that's maybe the way we need to go. I'm going to leave it there. Up the Arsenal. I've got off your game season ending coming tomorrow, so that's just having a look from other clubs' perspective as well as looking into Europe, and that I will do tomorrow with Josh, off your game, and then going forward on the Gunning Truth for the off season. I'm going to look at preseason. I'm going to look at the type of players that I think we need. Probably not going to do a full show within the next 2 weeks or so. But if there is any signings, which I'm really hoping there is after the conference, Europa Conference League and after the Champions League, then I will definitely do videos and in-depth profile on these players when we do sign them. Up the Gunners.